Hey there, what's going on? Welcome to the Jess Marshall podcast. Okay, so this week, doing my first podcast virtually with a comedian out of New Orleans by the name of Trew. And Chris is going to come on here, tell us all about his life, but we're also going to talk about what we can do to help out with Hurricane Ida relief. Chris is funny as fuck, so I hope you enjoy this, and I'll talk to you after. Chris, what's up, man? Welcome to the podcast.
Man, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk to you, learn about you, but then also we're going to talk about this devastation that Hurricane Ida's brought to your neck of the woods and talk about what we can do to try to help out. I know that's a big passion of yours. How are things down there in terms of livability, getting around, power back on, people have food, water, the essentials, things like that, or is that still a struggle a little bit there?
Well, it depends on what part of the map we're looking at, right?
Sure.
Where I am in New Orleans, things are getting back to normal in terms of, people aren't hustling for bottles of water and hoping their power turns on today. But people are still wanting their trash to be picked up on from the front of their house.
Yeah.
But if you go down south a little bit more, to Terrebonne, Lafourche parishes, it's still pretty messy and still pretty devastated down there. So still a lot of work to be done.
Right before we went live, I asked you if you were down there during Katrina. Can you walk our viewers through so this hurricane was actually more severe than Katrina, but what's the difference? I'm not saying that the seriousness of the dire situation is any different, but what's the difference, kind of what went wrong during Katrina and what we're up against with Ida?
Yeah, so technically, a lot of things were more severe for Ida. If hurricanes are like a football game and you're looking at the stats, it's like, oh, Ida whooped our ass a lot more because there's more telephone poles down, there's more people without power. But the difference is that for Katrina, the levees broke, and the levees breaking is what got all the water into the city, which is why you saw all those camera shots of, houses underwater. The levees held up during Ida. So the levees did their job, which is great, considering that Ida was technically stronger than Katrina.
Did the levees fail during Katrina because there were pumps failing? Is that why they failed then but didn't fail this time around?
I can't speak with too much authority on exactly what happened. There's all kinds of theories about what happened. You ask some people and they think the levees were destined to fail anytime there was a strong storm. You ask some people and they think the levees were blown up on purpose, as far as some conspiracy theories are concerned. But the point is, where we are right now, the levees held, so the city did not flood, which is ideal. It's ideal for the levees to not break, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that flooding was so severe last time around with Katrina. We've still, though, got a huge need for support, help, whether it's restoring properties or just getting people to where, they can just survive on the daily. And I know that's where we kind of came into contact, was you're really putting in a lot of effort to try to get your hometown back squared away. What did you do when you saw it coming? You were gearing up there for several days, and then what's your effort looked like ever since it made landfall?
Well, man, so I started documenting what was happening for a couple of reasons. One, it was for my own mental health, to be honest. It gave me something to do, especially when the power was out. It was just like, it felt, I was just drawn to be documenting it. I was prepared. I live upstairs from a business. I don't own property. I don't have kids, so I'm like, I wasn't worrying about anyone else, basically, is my point. So I was in a place where I was able to do something like take on the responsibility of documenting it in whatever way made the most sense to me. What I was not expecting, though, this is starting to open the doors into how we met. What I wasn't expecting was the audience to spike the way that it had in the hours after the storm landed. My Instagram account really blew up. I think it was listed on like an Instagram discovery page. So like one of the hashtags just went semi-viral. And so then people started, this almost sounds funny to say it this way, but almost started relying on me to get their hurricane news that wasn't from the Weather Channel. So then I had people who were like, oh, how can I help? What do you need? How can I help? And I had access to a car. So it snowballed very quickly, but people started giving me money so that I could go to the grocery store and buy things for people who couldn't leave their house or who didn't have a car, or people wanted me to go check on their property for them. And then that's when it really took over my life in a really strange way. And it was good for me to keep me busy. I also felt like I was being very helpful. And then I met a ton of people who were interested in what was going on, either because they wanted to learn about it, or because they used to live in New Orleans, or because they wanted to help, like you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been to New Orleans numerous times. Been down there playing rugby. Been down there for a couple of bowl games. Awesome
couple
city.
Bachelor parties, huh?
Actually, yes, one. Yeah, that I can barely remember. Yeah, absolutely. What is it about New Orleans that makes it unlike anywhere else on the face of the earth?
Man,
because it's special.
I could go off. I can cut like the longest wrestling promo over like how great New Orleans is. That could last for hours. But if I could to try and sum it up, there's something really unique about a place that's not supposed to be here, and that has like an expiration date. It's almost like New Orleans is representative of just life in general, like how it's impermanent. Enjoy it while you can. And I think when you live in a place that is like that, there are all kinds of other things that get in the mix, and just the good times, the community, the feeling. Like it's like I feel like New Orleans is a person. I feel like it's the longest relationship I've ever been in. I feel like it's someone that I care deeply about. That you see people who come here for college who fall in love with it and never leave. You see people who come here and visit one time, and their mantle at home has all these souvenirs from New Orleans. They just swear by it. There's something about the spirit and the culture of the city that's really flexible in terms of the types of people it inspires. And really, I think the first thing I said is probably my biggest praise to the city. There's something special about a place on the map that's not supposed to be there. Like New Orleans, like read an old history book about New Orleans. New Orleans is not supposed to be where it is. It's under sea level. It floods all the time. It's insane that New Orleans is where it is. And I think there's something about that is like in the air too. We don't know how long this place is going to last. So let's party and love it and be kind and sweet while we're here.
I love that. I have a pretty good friend who loves New Orleans, says it's his favorite city in the world. He's from up here, and he says that the difference between New Orleans and anywhere else he's been, even New York City, San Francisco, some of the classic U.S. cities, or overseas, Paris, London, I don't know, Bucharest. There's all. Prague in the Czech Republic's crazy too, but he says New Orleans has more soul than any city that he's ever been to, and maybe that really kind of aligns with what you said about it. It's kind of like a person. It's got soul, it's got character that you don't find other places. And I think what you said there, it's not supposed to be there. It's been carved out, and people just so loyal to it just because of that atmosphere, that culture. Is that why y'all don't just go, you know what, I'm moving to high ground?
Yeah, well, I think that the people who are from New Orleans, who have lived here for an extended period of time and call it home, not, some of them end up leaving, or they swear they'll never leave, but there's one too many storms. They feel let down by the government or by the city, whatever. And I just want to say I don't begrudge anyone for doing that. So I don't know everyone's individual's lives, right? But I will say that most people stand by and defend the city in such an interesting, passionate way that I don't really see in other spots. I don't see in other cities. I mean, there are some home run spots in the map, like you said. San Francisco and New York are two other classic American cities. People love them, but I don't see people fighting for those cities the way they fight for it down here in New Orleans. I and it's fascinating why that is. It's I think about it every day. It's crazy how loyal we are to a place that isn't the easiest to live in.
Yeah, it's a challenge just to probably to keep your marbles from hurricane season to hurricane season. I'm sure that it's a challenge, like you said. Your mental health was helped by you chronicling what's going on. I mean, is that something in the back of your mind, or are the hurricanes just flowing? I'm talking about the drinks now, not the storms. Are they flowing so much that during the rest of the year, it's kind of, you don't remember it until it's back in your face when hurricane season comes back around?
Well, that's a really interesting point that I think we could go off on for a while here, which is we are really good at turning tragedy into triumph, into taking these negative things into positive. Like the obstacle is the way, and so right on down to one of the most famous drinks from New Orleans is named after the thing that is most likely to destroy New Orleans. We had these things called hurricane parties, which, when I was growing up, a hurricane party was, you knew the power was going to go out from this day to this day. And so everyone's deciding whose house are we going to, who's bringing what. And the idea is we're all going to be in the same place together. There's going to be booze and food and all this. And we just have each other. And so the concept of a hurricane party, like a quickly put together party where there's not going to be any power, that's like a celebratory, positive thing. But it's because of a nasty, awful thing like a hurricane. So the concept of a hurricane party has decreased a little bit in recent years, because now, the idea of partying during Katrina seems really foreign. Like, why would you party during that? That was awful. But when I was growing up, the concept of a hurricane party was an annual thing. It was like, where's the hurricane party at this year, y'all? So I think, just going back to your point, being so positive and optimistic, even in the face of something as destructive as a hurricane, I think that is another thing that is that's a crucial part of the brand of a New Orleanian.
Yeah, it's woven into your DNA, I guess. That
big time.
Literally, come hell or high water, y'all are gonna stick together. You used a term, a quote about 4 minutes ago. The obstacle is the way. Are you familiar with Stoicism?
Very much so, my friend. Very much.
Awesome, man. Me too. Very interested in it. I read the Daily Stoic. Often, I think I look at their Instagram page maybe more often. I need to read that book more. But what's that? What has that study into Stoicism done for your mindset?
Well, I'm very fascinated with it. And big shout outs to Ryan Holiday. I think he's such a good writer, good dude. Really appreciate his work. It's something about it. It felt like it was already in me in a certain way, but I just never knew what to call it. I never knew what these things meant. And so when I'm reading stuff like The Obstacle is the Way, I'm like cheering, like, yeah, that's like what I've been trying to, at my best. I was like that at one point. And then so it kind of highlights the times in my life where I was able to be resilient, and it has put like a title on it in a way that I wasn't expecting. And it makes me want to seek out more opportunities like that. I can tell you, since I read that book, I definitely am like, my favorite takeaway is something good must become of this. Like, a bad thing happens. Okay, something good must come out of this. I might not know what it is right now, but I will figure it out at some point. And I'm not saying that everyone in New Orleans is a stoic or that they read Ryan Holiday, but I think somewhere deep down in their soul, they all have some stoicism in them because we're constantly looking on the bright side of things.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's up to us it's up to each person, right? You're the gatekeeper of your thought life, and when bad things are happening, you look up and the rock is rolling down the hill at you. It's at that point that you can either decide, well, I'm going to get run over here, or I'm going to power through and I'm going to figure out how to make, like you said, make something good come of this. We're coming off of a weekend where we observed 20 years since a massive tragedy, the terrorist attacks, or at least the World Trade Center's coming down. Whatever your view of what happened there is, we lost other Americans. And what I found fascinating, I was young, I was in college, I was in a stats class when the towers came down, and the days following that, there were no Republicans, there were no Democrats, there were no gays, there were no straights. We were all just Americans, and we came together, maybe like no other time in history. When a hurricane hits an area, well, can you talk about how people do just kind of, they come out of the woodwork, they come together. It doesn't matter if you have a Trump bumper sticker or a Biden bumper sticker, you're an American, you're here to help. Is that spirit, does that reignite every time there's one of these natural disasters?
Yeah, absolutely. But I do want to say that New Orleans feels like, kind of has that feel to it in a lot of ways anyway, at its best, right? During a tragedy like this, I don't think that most people were wondering who they were helping. Like, okay, I'm helping this person, I'm rescuing this person's dog and bringing it to this other spot for them, but I wonder who this is. Like, am I aligned with them politically? I don't think people were doing that. I also don't think there was time to do it. So even if your instinct was to do that, you did not have time to do it. And I think that just love and kindness won out, and being a New Orleanian. To zoom even further to what you were saying, it's like, yeah, we're all Americans, or maybe we all are, right? We're all living in America. But like, to zoom in even further, it's like, we are New Orleanians. We are like people of the bayou. We are Louisiana. Let's go. And so you see a lot of different people helping each other and not really being concerned with whatever your differences may be.
That's awesome.
It's very similar actually to like when the Saints play. I mean, like,
yeah.
New Orleans is a very, is a very mixed city, and Saints games, it's like, no one is, like people probably don't realize the political affiliations of the Saints fan next to them at the Superdome, and they're hugging them and cheering them the same way. I mean, maybe they do, but it just feels like we're not really concerned about that. So it's very similar to like this, the feeling at a Saints game. It was like that after the storm, where we're all just here. We're all playing for the same team. We all want the same things right now.
I love that. I remember very, very vividly, not only because this Saints player went to Washington State, which is where I grew up, but that blocked punt was... Oh, my
God, Steve Gleason, baby.
Yeah, and he's a huge Pearl Jam guy, and I'm a huge Pearl Jam guy. I've seen them more times than I can count, but that's an awesome statue out front of Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Were you at that game? Are you been a Saints fan all your life?
Been a Saints fan all my life. I got the baby pictures and the weird Saints pajamas to prove it. And I was not at that game. I had ended up, after Katrina, I evacuated to Austin, and I ended up staying in Austin, Texas for a few years before moving back to New Orleans. And so I missed that game. But I mean, I was on the phone with my parents. I was on my feet at the Saints bar in Austin. I mean, that's one of the best sporting experiences of my life, and I wasn't even there for it. That's incredible.
Yeah, talk about a guy in Steve Gleason who has embraced the adversity he's been faced with, and man, he's a real inspiration. You talk about a guy who has lost all motor functions, but he still communicates, and man, I've seen him on stage live at a couple Pearl Jam concerts, and he's a pretty inspirational fella.
Love Steve Gleason. I love what he's done for this community. Yeah, you're absolutely right. What a stellar example of like the obstacle is the way, and what a good dude. He's such an advocate for people in his positions and the people of New Orleans, and yeah, just an immortal figure, and not just New Orleans sports history, but I would say New Orleans history in general. Like, even if you're not a Saints fan, if you don't know what a fullback is or how many points a field goal is worth, there's a really good chance that you know who Steve Gleason is and what he did that night.
That's badass, and he's a Coug, so fucking
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. Let's talk about you, man. You grew up down there, born and raised, high school. What was your upbringing like?
Yeah, so we lived in a suburb. It wasn't directly in the city, but we lived that New Orleans life every weekend. It's like we're going to the French Quarter, we're doing Mardi Gras stuff. I had a very Louisiana family. Grandparents are super Cajun. Went to high school a little bit north of the city, about 30, 40 minutes north, in a place called Covington. Went to LSU. Dropped out of LSU to pursue comedy and moved right back down to the city. And with the exception of that time in Austin, I've been in the city ever since then, and I'll never live anywhere else. I mean, I'm New Orleans till I'm gone. I love traveling. Don't get me wrong, but I don't want to live anywhere else.
That's awesome. I am fascinated by comedians. I think that they're amazing. Some of the shit that y'all come up with blows my mind. I try my comedy routine out with very mixed reviews at home and with friends. But what got you into it? And have you always been, has that always fascinated you? Have you always been into it? And how did you get over your fear of public speaking?
Yeah, so I always wanted to do it, but when you're a kid, everything is so. It's like your ideas and aspirations are always pretty vague. You don't know specifically what you want to do, but you're like, I want to work in space, and then you're not an astronaut, but you are making the thing that NASA maybe uses, but it's like close enough, right? So when I'm a kid, I'm not thinking, I specifically want to produce comedy shows and go on the road and whatever, but I knew I wanted to be in the entertainment field, right? So, you take some acting classes, you figure out what you want to do. For me, it was in high school, in 1999. So I graduated in 99 from high school, and that was right when the internet was becoming a thing. And when I realized that, like, oh, this is like a platform for jokes that I haven't seen before. Like, all the jokes that I know of is from Saturday Night Live, or it's from Mad Magazine, or like Far Side, Calvin Hobbes, whatever. And then it's like, oh, this is a new route for doing this. So I started putting all my efforts into making like comedy websites happen. And then it just kept going and going. The first time I ever did stand up in college, it was awful. It was, very traumatizing, as it typically is. Then I didn't do it for the longest time, and I was just doing everything but performing. But then, I just got my mind right and was like, this is what I want to do. And so I just strapped in for the long haul, and of course, I have a ton of offshoot stories from there. But yeah, for me, I always wanted to be in the comedy world. I didn't know exactly what job I wanted to have. And I think one of the things I'm most proud of right now is that I've had almost every job in the comedy world. So yeah, I feel good about that.
You are a comedian. You've put together comedy shows. You've managed and coached other comedians. It's fascinating. You've made your living at something that you've always wanted to do, which not many people can say, really. What's a typical non-hurricane day look like for you?
Oh man, so it really depends on what hat I'm wearing. Part of part of my thing, for better or worse,
Don't
has
cover that
been.
sweet hair up, man. Don't wear a hat.
Yeah, come on. It's a metaphorical hat, baby. Come on. But it still looks good on me. Whatever, it depends on what hat I'm wearing that day. The life that I chose for myself was a very, kind of like doing it all on my own. Not everything on my own, but I think a lot of people in my position, you have a choice. It's like, are you going to, like, when you almost declare, I want to be an actor or writer or comedian, something, it's like, okay, well, when are you going to move to LA or New York or Chicago? And for me, I never wanted to move. So I knew early on that it was going to be me doing things on my own, wearing a bunch of hats. So when you ask me what is a typical day like, it's like, I don't know, am I like preparing for a show and actually like writing jokes, or am I booking this comedy club that I run the shows for? Am I doing that? Am I planning the logistics of a tour for myself because I don't have a manager doing it for me, because I never moved to New York and I never got to that level where someone doing all the work for you? So it's really tough to answer that, man. It's like, I'm doing a lot of things at once, but I am loving every minute of it. To be super clear, I'm loving every minute of it. I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm happy with where I am.
That's awesome. I think it's very cool that you have that live a DIY life mindset. I know you have a YouTube channel. Our viewers need to check that out. I was watching a video. It was either on your YouTube channel or it directed me to your YouTube channel. A gal talking about how she was at a corporate event, and it was like a corporate retreat, and their bosses told them, we're all going to load onto a bus tomorrow. We're not going to tell you where we're going. They showed up. They were at a theater, and you were there, and she had glowing things to say. Actually, your facial expression in that video is it's rad, because you're like, what? How you liked it that much? What do you do on these to help these team building type? That fascinates me. I love team stuff, and we run teams at our companies. What were you doing? What were some of the exercises you were putting them through to help them build their camaraderie and esprit de corps?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite things to talk about and favorite things to do. I got into teaching improv comedy classes to people who wanted to pursue a career in comedy, but then very quickly picked up on the fact that this is something that businesses and corporate retreats could also use. You just change some of the language, so where it's not like, we're doing this so that you learn how to be confident on stage, and you change the language to be like, this is for you to be a better listener in a corporate setting, or a better teammate in a group project mode, whatever. So that day, it's actually one of my favorite all-time classes. And I tell them that all the time. I think that they think I tell everyone that, but I truly mean it. Was like, that was one of my favorite all-time classes. It's a social media agency in San Diego that has employees all over the country. They all came to New Orleans. They showed up at my theater, and I taught them an improv class. Most of them were terrified. Most of them were like embarrassed, and they were like, I don't feel like being funny for an hour. I don't have no interest in getting on stage and doing jokes. But what they don't realize, what a lot of people don't realize, maybe your listeners don't realize, is that improv is way less about show up and be quick-witted and funny. It's way more about being present, being in flow, and being a great listener, being able to detect patterns in human interaction and using that to your advantage in terms of creating something interesting. So that's why people take improv classes, even if they have no interest in ever performing comedy. And this is fascinating to me. This is like my bread and butter. I think everyone in the world should try improv, because it really changes the game in terms of being a good communicator. It helps you be more charismatic, helps you be more confident, whether it's on a literal stage or a metaphorical stage. And, I'm very fortunate that I've gotten into several companies and gotten to teach them improv, and I've seen it work. I've seen it change the way people treat others. I've seen it. And also it's a ton of fun. Like I'm saying all the like benefits of improv. You also do laugh a lot. You laugh. You establish new inside jokes. You take you go back to a more childlike sense in your brain. So it's like relaxing and reduces stress for adults. It really is like the best thing. Like every company should have someone like me doing this once a month, because they will, your employees will be better at sales. There'll be less conflicts at work. There'll be more joy and laughter. And yeah, I think improv is the absolute best, like, Swiss Army knife in all of communication, for sure.
It sounds awesome. About it. Yeah, no, you are a hell of a pitch man. I mean, I think we need to load up a party bus and bring the autograph team down there and have you put us through the paces. Yeah, or you can run up here to Dallas, which we got lots of great Tex-Mex, but in terms of soul, there's not much soul here in Dallas, unfortunately. So it's not Austin, but we got a lot of concrete and a lot of highways and a lot of fancy cars and people with money and
you got a big old green ball,
yes,
in the middle of downtown.
Yeah, we got Reunion Tower and we got the Cowboys, I guess. So yeah, that's very cool, man. What got you started on that? Was it just kind of a natural progression as you're helping? What was your first foray into helping a corporation with a team building type session?
Well, the reason why I even started doing improv in the first place is because my original goal was to be a hidden camera show actor. I wanted to be one of the people in a hidden camera show that was like in on the joke, like straight face. I wanted to be that person. And I was doing production work in New Orleans. It's like 2003, 2004. I was working on movies because the movie industry was very big here at the time. It's when the tax credits were in place. So all these movies moved down to New Orleans. And I was asking some people who were high up on the food chain in film production. I was like, how do you even get that job? How do you even be a hidden camera show actor? And everyone said the same thing. It's like, those are all improv people. Those people are all like incredible improv comedians. So step one, take an improv class. So I was like, all right, step one, take an improv class. I did it. I fell in love with it. I started performing. I just loved everything about it. And then it was actually after Katrina that where it all fast forwarded in a really big way. And I started doing it very seriously it was the thing that consumed me. And you start teaching it, you teach it to the first company, and then you realize, oh, this is like so beneficial and it pays really well. It's like, oh, this could be a job. Like this could be, I can make a living off of doing this. And it also felt like, there's something, I just really like helping people, and I'm really fired up at like being able to help in super specific ways. And so, I'm just thinking like showing up to like Dell Computers or like Whole Foods corporate office and teaching all these people who under no other circumstances would they walk into a comedy club and say, teach me comedy techniques, but they like have to do it because the human resources department hired me or whatever. And then you see that they actually loved it. Some of them are really good at it. And then you see that it rewires their brain. It untangles that autopilot that most adults, unfortunately, are destined for. So yeah, my journey to do it, I mean, it was a weird, windy journey, but as soon as I found it, I never stopped. Like teaching improv is the thing that has been the most constant for me the past 15, 16 years.
Well, you seem very passionate about it. When you enrolled at LSU, what did you enroll there to study? Just Death Valley on Saturday nights and partying, or did you want to be an accountant or an architect or something, or what were you interested in?
Man, I wish there was a major that was just Death Valley Saturday nights. That would be the hardest major to get into. Everyone, they're like, we only have a room for 80,000 or whatever. Yeah. But I wanted to do broadcast journalism, and honestly, I remember quite specifically that I had to pick something. It was like you can't just like figure it out. Later, you had to like start on some sort of path. I was interested. I've always been a sports fan. I used to write I used to write fake sports magazines when I was in high school. I was always interested in writing. So I was like, I'll do broadcast journalism. Little did I know that the mass communication school at LSU is like terrifying to get into. I did not have the grades to get in there. And so like a year and a half into LSU, I had like downgraded to like general studies. It was like just survive.
Yeah.
Just survive.
Yeah. You did you have you commented on your first stand-up routine experience that it was pretty disastrous. Did you then, after you kind of got over that failure, did you have a really like good couple experiences to where you were like, you know what, I'm out on this school thing. I'm gonna go run full time after this comedy dream.
Yeah, except it didn't come through performing. It came through writing and producing. Because I didn't, I'm embarrassed to say this kind of, but I didn't do stand up again or improv or anything for a couple of years. I was a little scarred, that's a pretty standard story, by the way. I'm not unique for that. Like a lot of people would be like, yeah, I tried it when I was 19 and then I didn't do it again until I was 24, whatever. But the thing that made me like cash out of LSU and go all in on my DIY career was a comedy website that was doing pretty well, that got pretty decent traffic. And then I was running with a crew of other DIY people, and we all were just like, this guy is good at editing. This guy has a camera. She is a good writer. It's like, we all just like came together, like, let's just make our own stuff. We made a movie in 2002. I mean, the movie was awful, but we did it. We made awesome. A 90-minute movie. We rented out a bar and played the movie on a big projector. I mean, we were doing all this DIY stuff in like 2002, 2003. So the seeds were being planted for me that was like, oh, I don't have to move to LA and get in line, And no disrespect to people who do that. That's the way some people are built, and they succeed at that. And I'm cheering for them. It just wasn't me. I didn't want to move to New York and just sweat out these 4-hour open mics to go and do 3 minutes for people who maybe weren't paying attention. I wasn't built that way. And so my way is longer and harder, but that's what I did.
That's very cool. I think there's maybe no better feeling in the world than collaborating with other like-minded individuals. And it sounds like you kind of found your tribe, and you were all have that creative edge, and maybe one thing led to another, and you all probably were stoking each other's fires. And are you still in contact with a lot of those people?
That specific group, no, because that's just the way the world works, right? I mean, that was 21, 22 years ago, and it's all good. But I have very, very fond memories of that, where it's like a group of people, no egos involved yet, and we all have a different role on this island, and everything complements each other. And I've consistently seeked that out in all aspects of my career ever since then. And that's a big part of, I think, the draw to improv, and why people who, even in a corporate setting, if I'm just teaching an improv class, a 2-hour improv class to this company, there's a chance that they will have that tribal feel and feel like they're a part of something. Like maybe it's a little bit of crisis bonding because everyone's nervous about doing the improv.
Absolutely.
Together. But like, yeah, so I definitely am a big fan of that mentality, of that energy, like feeling like you're a part of something. I think it's a big part of what I do and what I'm good at creating for others as well.
When you consider the best, the all-time greats in the comedy world, we lost one yesterday. Actually, Norm Macdonald, very sad. That guy. I was watching a Tom Segura video that he shot yesterday, where he was talking about all these people would be. We're talking titans in their industry. Sandler. He mentioned David Spade, several others in that SNL group. They would all maybe be doing press for a movie or even just press for SNL, and a question would get asked to the group, and everyone would look over at Norm, because as Tom said, comedians don't care who's the biggest box office draw. They don't care who's banking the most. They don't care who's the best looking. They're just like, that's the funniest guy. We all know it. That's the funniest guy. I say all of that to ask the question, what's the main common denominator that you see or that you've observed in the comedy greats? Is it their ability to observe a situation and then break it down and articulate what truly is funny or odd about the situation, or what is it from a pro? Like, I'm just a fan of funny people, but from someone who actually is fucking funny, what do you think it is about comedians that makes the greats great?
Well, I think you're actually really close. I think it's having a very specific perspective and then being bold enough to be unapologetic about that, right? It's like you have to know who you are and what your viewpoint of the world is for all the things like filter through that. You can't just be like, it's the reason why day one of an improv comedy class, if someone shows up and, I'm like, why is everyone here? And one guy's like, I'm here because all my friends tell me I'm super funny. I know right away that person's going to have a hard time because they don't know who they are. Like, they're just used to being like regurgitating movie quotes or just like saying other people's jokes. And it's like, that's not actually funny. I mean, it can be in some contexts, but you don't know who you are yet. You don't know what you're all about. Norm Macdonald, I mean, I'm not familiar enough with his early career before he was famous, but I bet you that dude figured out who he was pretty quickly and then just invested in himself in the biggest ways and then was unapologetic and pretty bold or weird, however you want to look at it, brave, bold, weird, to never stop doing that. It's like he was always him. And I think that is what a lot of people in my industry are attracted to and are in awe of, because you can be really funny, but still not know what your real perspective is on a thing. And you won't be one of the greats, But Norm Macdonald, like, the reason why everyone's coming out of the woodwork to be like, here's my Norm story, or Norm meant so much to me when I first saw this, is because dude had a very specific perspective and it's a very specific delivery. And it was like, that's who that is. Like you could probably, I mean, I'm not saying it would necessarily be good, but you could you could at least attempt a Norm Macdonald impression and people would be like, you're trying to do Norm Macdonald. Right. Yes. Which I think means something. It's like, yeah, because we all know because he was so specific. And I think that's what it is about him.
Do you think that this is a really broad stroke question, but do you think that comedians by and large are more open-minded than many other types of entertainers? Meaning, well, let's just take, for example, I really started to like Joe Rogan when I discovered his podcast. I'm a construction guy. I'm not really into tech, right? So it sounds like you caught on to the internet when you were young. Shoot, I didn't even hardly use my email till I was like 28, and we're about the same age. So yeah, designing websites, stuff like not for me. Didn't know what podcasts were. What the hell is this? I start watching Joe Rogan clips. Well, I'm a pretty conservative guy. That's my politics. Whatever. I'm not a Republican. But Joe Rogan's a very liberal guy, Hollywood guy. But what I noticed about him and what I think attracted me and has attracted so many people, because he's the biggest in the space and he's a comedian and that's what he likes to do most, is that it seems to me, is very observational when it comes to all viewpoints. He knows what he believes, or at least he articulates what he believes, but it seems like he and many other comedians that I've spoken with are more open-minded, or at least more willing to see the issue from many, many different angles. And I think that goes back to that observation thing. We all see life through the lens of our experiences. So the way you have experienced life is going to affect the way you see adversity. Same for me. Same for anybody. And maybe that's why comedians are more open-minded. Do you concur with that, or do you think I'm off base?
No, I think you're on the right track here. What it is a comedian's job most of the time is to have an interesting perspective and to have an opinion about something. And if you pigeonhole yourself into being like, well, I only ever think X, no matter what, you will eventually start working, harder, not smarter. So I think the best of the best, or at least the most interesting. And I think interesting counts just as much as funny. And that's one of my comedy hot takes. I think interesting is almost just as good, almost just as funny as being funny. And I think what is really interesting is when comedians are open-minded, because they just never work themselves into a corner, and they're able to adapt in the moment and have more, I don't know, just have more varied perspectives on things, which I think is important. Joe Rogan is a really good example of that. Like he's probably one of the most interesting people on the internet. Even if you hate his viewpoints, you would have a hard time convincing me that you don't find him interesting, because of what you just said. So I think that a lot of great comedians, but not even just great, I think comedians in general, I think if you really buy into this job and if you really love the art form, I think that there's a really good chance that you are also pretty open-minded.
Yeah, I love that. I think the thing that fascinates me about the different styles of comedy, whether it's an old legend like George Carlin, or somebody new, super hot, a little controversial like Anthony Jeselnik, is delivery. Is delivery part of your style as a person? Is it something that evolves as you start to see what works for you on stage? If your delivery, like Jeselnik's delivery, it might be an acquired taste for most people, but nobody who I've ever watched a Jeselnik show or skit or stand-up performance with has not laughed, and laughed pretty hard at least one time in there, even if at most 99.9% of it was super controversial and uncomfortable.
Right.
What's it like developing your style and the way you deliver? Because here's the opposite of that to me. I don't think that Kevin Hart is funny at fucking all, and that's hot take. He yells at you and he says what he says with such conviction and passion that you almost feel like, if I don't laugh here, I'm letting this guy down. That's my opinion. And it's a weird deal. I say that to people and they're like, "No, man, Kevin Hart's hilarious. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about, Jess." But the delivery thing fascinates me. You said it's an art form. It truly is an art form. What's it like developing your delivery, your style?
Well, it takes a lot. It's a great question, by the way. It takes a lot of time, and it's a lot of trial and error. There might be some outliers in that, like Jeselnik may have always been that way, but I bet you, assuming he wasn't always that way, whenever he found what he has now, his job as an artist was to invest all of his units of energy into that style and see if it pays off, which it obviously did, right? Most comics are, especially ones you've never heard of, maybe even some of the ones that you have heard of, are still trying to find it. There's a pretty good chance that if someone's name is on Netflix and has a special, they found their voice, right? Yeah. But you might see, if you go to one of your local clubs and, you see someone who you like a whole lot, they may be like at a 5 on a 1 to 10 energy scale in 2021. And you might see them in 2023 and they're at 10 and they're way funnier. And you're like, oh, this person learned to be more energetic on stage and that worked for them. Obviously, if someone would have told Jeselnik, hey man, you need to be more energetic on stage, and if he would have listened to them, he might not be Anthony Jeselnik right now, yeah. Right? So it's like, it takes all kinds. we all have to, it's all our job to find out what our voice and our style is, which is why everyone should support their local open mic scene so that you can go and see people figuring that shit out, because it takes a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. When we were doing our little setup call on Saturday, just kind of talking through just a little bit, we didn't get too in depth because I really wanted to learn about you here, live. I was telling you about a buddy of mine who tried stand up for the first time ever at that spot down there in Dallas. Hot dang, 4-day weekend. Yep. And I was doing some reading a couple of weeks ago about Anthony Bourdain, who I've always thought was a very fascinating guy. I always thought, man, this guy, he followed his passions and was able to make a life out of that. The travel thing, the cooking thing, but he was an ever-evolving guy as well. He fought off some demons, and he would focus his obsessions on other things, and one of those was jiu-jitsu. He became very obsessed with that, but the other was comedy. He's a great writer. That's how he made his name to begin with. How much of comedy comes down to writing? Because when I was younger, I used to think, man, that's just a really smart guy who gets up there and just starts riffing and is funny. But when you really listen to comics talk, especially about the craft, it's about, man, the more disciplined you are with writing. I mean, do you have a pen on your nightstand and you're writing down jokes before you go to sleep? Or do you wake up, you dream a joke? Do you wake up and write it down like some songwriters do? How's that work for you?
Yeah, so it takes all approaches. There's so many different ways of doing it. You got to figure out what works for you and then go all in, which is a recurring theme, what I've been saying here, whether it's for finding your career or writing a joke or, locating your passion. But for me, it's, I never know when the inspiration is going to strike. I definitely have designated times where I'm like, I have this time blocked off to work on my craft. But like I said, one of my demons is that I wear so many hats in the comedy world that sometimes I'm like, oh, if I don't have it today, writing wise, I will go do some logistics stuff, whereas a lot of comedians don't worry about the logistics because they have an agent or a manager. So they're just pound out the writing no matter what, they fight through it. So I'm a weird case in that regard. But to go back to something else that you said, it's some people write on stage. Some people are so comfortable that they know they have a concept. They know that they're going to say, isn't it weird when you're waiting in line and the person behind you answers a phone call and the person in front of you does too? That might be all they know. And they're like, I'm going to go work this out on stage because I'm more comfortable on stage. And so cut to them at the open mic and they say that having no idea where they're going with it. But they find something, an audience chuckles at this and they're like, oh, I'm going to go harder on that. They laugh harder. He's like, oh, that's the thing. Then maybe that's when you go and you open up the Moleskine notepad.
Yeah.
You file new, open new file, and you name the joke. But, that's when those things happen for a lot of people. But some comedians are just really prolific writers, and they write paragraphs knowing that only 2 or 3 lines are worth a shit, but they have to write it all out. And you can tell when you go and watch comedy that some people are basically reading what they wrote and not living in the moment. But that's something that people need to experience for themselves and figure out how to work around.
Sure. Yeah, I've seen some of Zach Galifianakis's very early work where his delivery is obviously just the way he delivers things and the way he looks is just, he's hilarious.
Yeah.
I believe that one of those that I saw was at the Comedy Cellar in New York, where I've been a couple of times. In fact, seated on the front row and just got destroyed by 3 and I was just laughing there, trying to have a good time, but it's me and the person I'm with are just getting merciless, I guess because I'm a big dude and maybe she was pretty or something, so it was we just got throcked there. Those are funny memories. You walk down those stairs. It's a crazy venue. What's your sweet spot? Because I've heard, like, Chappelle says his sweet spot's like 300-400 people at a venue. Obviously some of these huge shows you're playing to, 10,000 or even more. What's your preference when you're doing a show in terms of the size of the venue, the amount of people in there? Is there one that you prefer over the other?
Yeah, great question. That's tough. I really, there's something really, I mean, this is an obvious answer, but if you're in front of a couple thousand people and they're already bought into it, especially if it's like, oh, I'm on this festival and everyone is here to see everyone here and everyone's just ready to have a good time, and I'm right before this like mega star. People are just ready for it. You almost feel like you can say anything and people are just ready.
They're primed up. Yeah.
I mean, that feels pretty invincible, right? I mean, that's like the pinnacle in a lot of ways. But I gotta say, to be like really true to my DIY roots, like it's really hard to beat a crammed, like small, independent, like kind of punk rock underground venue that seats 50. They don't even have a performing license. Like you're not even supposed to be there. They don't have insurance.
It's like Comedy Fight Club.
Yeah, almost. And it's like, I mean, there's still seats. People bought a ticket, but it's like we're not supposed to be here right now. But there's 40 folding chairs, and somehow there's 90 people in here. Like that is, and I think a lot of even like really big time famous comedians would echo this. It's really hard to beat that like sweaty, like we're all in this, we're seeing something that is strange and unique that will only ever happen here. It's not being filmed, it's not a stunt. It's like, this is like real raw. Like there's something unbeatable about that. Big time.
What would a young comedian need to know just about the business before they jumped in? Like, you really better be, you've said all in numerous times, love that term, use that term every day with our people. You got to be all in. If you're not all in, you may as well get all the way out, because halfway in is all the way out, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but
it's a waste of time.
Yeah, man. What are we doing? Let's just go throw a line in the water and go bass fishing if we're going to be, half-assing this thing. But if you were giving advice to your like 18-year-old self, what would you tell yourself now that you're looking back at this life that you've created?
I think I would want to tell myself, just be prepared for the amount of, I'm saying that I'm serious, but I'm also kind of laughing at myself, just the amount of like disloyalty that you might encounter from people who, for various reasons, just are in or out on you at the drop of a hat. Comedy is entertainment in general. I think other, painters and writers actors might also say the same thing. It might be indicative of the industry, not comedy specifically, but I would just be like, stay as positive as you possibly can and just be open-minded and always look for the good in every situation, because people will bail on you. People will say they're going to do something and then not do it. People will say that you said something you didn't say or whatever. It's just like, it can be brutal sometimes, something as intimate and personal as comedy, or really, again, any art. And that's tough for a lot of people. I mean, I know a lot of people get out of entertainment because of that, the egos, and, so I would say, stay strong, stay strong. And I would tell 18, here's what I would say for sure. I'd say, hey, when you're in your late 30s, you're going to really be into stoicism and like meditation. Start now.
Yeah.
Start now.
Absolutely. You seem like you're very entrepreneurial compared to many of the other comedians that I know personally. So I'm not friends with any that are, famous. You're one of the more famous ones that I'm friends with now. I consider everyone who comes on the podcast a friend, unless they screw me in business after or something like that.
I'm in. Let's be friends.
Yeah. But what is it that DIY like that's in your fabric that just like, I'm gonna do this, I don't feel like writing today, so I'm gonna go knock out some logistics chores or whatever? Did you have a mentor growing up that you saw, like, this person, they want something, they're not going to take no for an answer, and they're not afraid to just get started, just start making mistakes if they're mistakes, or wins if they're wins? What is it that got you rolling down that path?
Man, I wish I had a very specific answer for you, but I just know it was always in the back of my mind, just do this yourself. I'm sure I saw enough like weird motivational posters or I watched a lot of sports documentaries when I was a kid. I'm sure I heard something enough times that was just like, you know what, like something along the lines of like, don't wait for anyone else to tell you whether or not you can do something, and just like go out there and and that's generic advice, but I just feel like I must have heard that enough times and it clicked in me. Also, I think my parents are really cool. They don't work in the entertainment world at all, but my dad has always been like, treat people the way you want to be treated, be good to others, all that stuff. My mom was always very organized. My dad always had business ideas. I remember him always being like, what if I open this kind of business? So I think like some weird combination of all those things smushed together. And also, I really have to shout out the internet again. It's like, it sounds crazy now. It's like internet is just like part of our lives. It's like as normal as, I don't know, having an air conditioner or whatever.
Seriously.
But when I'm in high school and the internet's coming out and I'm like, wait a minute, I can write anything and anyone can go and look at it by typing in this. It blew my mind. I went all in on it. I was like, and then when I realized you could like make albums and put them up, people can download them, I was like, okay, let's do that too. And then I just was very grateful, very lucky that I came along in a time where people could start to do things themselves. And and of course that's very normal now. Now it's like, if you're waiting for someone to tell you that you can have a podcast, then what the fuck is going on with you? Like, you could go buy equipment. I mean, it still takes a lot of work and time and energy and skills, but like, you can start practicing that right now.
We've got YouTubers who are hitting bigger boxing pay-per-view numbers than any pro boxer has ever hit in the history of pay-per-views. So the DIY, just get out there and get after it and chase your dream thing, it's a big deal. I mean,
one of my favorite things that I've ever heard, I think this is, you know who Mark Manson is? The writer Mark Manson. He wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah.
My favorite thing that he ever said, and I'm pretty sure this is his thing, I hope I'm right, but he said, you want to pick what problems you want to have. Like, no matter what you got going on, like, pick the problems you want. And the problems that I picked were basically like all the logistical issues of booking my own tours and like wearing all the hats that I'm wearing. I'm good with that. So anyone who's getting started, just like pick the problems that you want to have. For some of you, the problems you want to have is like, you don't mind moving to LA and having your rent double or triple, and then waiting till the end of an open mic to go and get 5 minutes and hope that someone saw you. It sounds like I'm shitting on all these big cities. I don't mean it like that. Like, I really support everyone there's a reason why those places are comedy hubs, right? I get it. But like, that's you picking that problem. As long as you are aware of the problem you're picking, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, making conscious decisions and playing them out and knowing, well, if I do move to LA, I'm gonna have to slang drinks or red caps or something to make ends meet. Then that's what you have to do. What's your first memory as a kid watching a movie with someone funny or a comedy special that like really resonated with you, where that kind of lit the flame of what would later become your career?
I do remember my father encouraging me to watch Blazing Saddles.
Sweet.
And I remember the beans around the fire, the bean scene. That and I know there's there's much smarter, funny things that happen in that movie than a bunch of guys sitting around a campfire and farting their ass off. But I remember almost being blown away. That's like, you can do that? Like, I thought we weren't supposed to do that. Like, that was an early thing. It was like, oh, okay, like being bold and taking chances. But like, a more specific example is I remember when I realized that Jim Carrey started as a comic, and then he was on In Living Color as like, which is a sketch comedy show. And then that became him, being the star of these movies. That was the first time I was like, okay, this is not one track. It's not one track. Like, he was a comic so that he could be an actor, so that he could, and I was like, oh, or you can go the other way around. You could like be a comic because you want to be a comic, and then the acting is like bonus. Or maybe you're an actor, but you start doing stand-up because you want to be more, whatever the thing is. I just realized that there's all kinds of paths, and it's not clear cut. Because, when you're a kid, you're like, oh, to become an actor, you have to take an acting class, audition, and then see what happens. Like, no, there's actually so many other paths you could possibly take.
Yeah, that is very interesting. It's also interesting to see how some comedians do get slotted into, hey, only this type of movie, and then some will try to make, brave decisions. I believe Will Ferrell did a movie with Emma Thompson. Gosh, it was a serious, I don't recall what it was called. And it was criticized pretty widely, but the comedian going serious. Back to Jim Carrey for a minute. He's a fairly accomplished painter now as well. He's pursued that craft. Are there things that you do, hobbies that you pursue outside of the sphere of comedy, things that keep you sane? We've talked a lot about sports, but are there other things that you do, maybe artistically, or just other interests that you have that help you maintain a balance in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes. One of my problems though, Jess, is I have this disease where it's really hard for me to not make even a hobby into like content or something else to do. Because for a long time I'd be like, oh, sports is where I turn everything off. I'm a huge basketball fan too. I love the Pelicans. And I'm like, okay, you know what? When I watch sports, that's when I'm like not trying to make things. But then I started making funny basketball videos, and then I got to like work for the Pelicans, making videos with the players. It was like okay, which was one of the most badass things I've ever gotten to do, and I'll never forget it. But I took like a reprieve and turned it into a side gig.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm a big reader. I try to read books. I do. I read a lot of books. But man, sometimes I'm reading a book and I'm like, I should write another book, and I'm like, shut up, like stop, so it's a constant struggle with me, but I go on long walks. I like to eat at really good restaurants. I'm a big food person. I live in a great city to be that way. So that might be the best, if I had to pick one thing that I'm not actively trying to squeeze content out of, it's probably like eating and traveling.
Yeah, you're not doing the Dave Portnoy pizza review. That's a genius bit he has, where he's going in and getting pizzas and coming out and reviewing them.
But that's a great example, because sometimes when I see that, I'm like, son of a bitch, like I should be doing something like that. I mean, not like that exact
You'd
thing,
be awesome at that. You would fucking crush it at that.
It would be so much fun. I mean, of course, I guess what I just said is a complete lie, because I have thought about, like, I do have ideas for like food/comedy shows. It's like, I'm just, I like me a lot, but I'm a nightmare when it comes to that kind of thing. It's a really hard question for me to answer in the most delightful way.
Yeah. Growing up, who are your favorite comedians, and who are some of your favorites now, whether they're mainstream or a little more obscure?
Ooh, well, Jim Carrey was the guy for me when I was younger, for sure. As I started to figure out, having a little bit more refined, it's like understanding comedy a little bit more. I liked. I was always drawn to things that were so weird. It was like, how does this exist? Like things like, I mean, Tom Green is like looking back on Tom Green stuff. It's like sometimes it's like it's like so obnoxious. I'm like, how in the world was this on MTV? But like that kind of makes me love it in a way.
Sure.
Syphil and Ollie, the sock puppet sketch comedy show, is like, how in the world did this get greenlit? Why is this on TV? It's like stuff like that, I think, was a big part of my early comedy brain, just being like, okay, there's a lot of things that are possible. Like, just because you haven't seen something doesn't mean you can't do that. So I would say stuff like that. Right now, probably my favorite like mainstream comic right now, which is so cool that he's mainstream, is Hannibal Buress.
Yeah.
I really like Hannibal a lot. I've gotten to do a lot of stuff with him in the past.
Took down Bill Cosby, man. Hannibal getting after it.
I mean, he was doing shows at my theater for like 50, 60 people before that stuff happened.
That's so cool.
And he's super. He's so smart. He's so funny. I'm a big fan of his. And, locally here in New Orleans, to shout out some people, there's a few people down here that I really like a lot. Karen Chapman and Jackie Palms are two comics down here that I think really highly of, that I think, they're pretty early in their comedy careers, but I think that they're just showing signs of like being relentless and continuing to try new things. And I like that about them. I like any comics that are willing to experiment and aren't afraid to fail and that try different things. Eventually you'll find the thing that makes you happiest, and then you'll go all in on that. But at the beginning, it's like, yeah, let's cast a wide net here. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, that pushing the envelope seems to be a really common theme amongst the ones that really break through. Help me understand this. I've always been an SNL fan ever since I grew up in a very religious household, so I had to sneak that when I was younger. Why isn't it funny anymore?
I think it's really hard for an institution to never lose its energy. It's the same reason why, the Golden State Warriors started, guys got injured, they fell off. The New England Patriots couldn't do it forever. It's like, I think there's just some general wear and tear. Maybe you get too cocky, and you stop evolving. I can't get more specific because I'm not actively watching Saturday Night Live, but I
you're not missing anything.
Okay, yeah, apparently. I think that's just true about anything that's popular in a way. It's kind of impressive how long. I mean, the fact that it's even on the air still, I think, is an accomplishment. But you're right. I mean, it's really tough for something to be that successful for a really long time. And then when it stops being successful, it probably has something to do with people who stopped working as hard or started cutting corners, whether that's in like talent or budget or production or effort, I don't know, but cutting some corners. And then, the people who have been watching their whole lives are like, this is not the same. And then you starts to crumble from the bottom, so that's kind of what happens.
Yeah, no, I don't. I know the easiest thing to do in the world is criticize. That's why there's so many critics and so very few actual people in the arena. The man in the arena is one of my favorite speeches or writings because it's not the critic that counts. Being a critic is like being an idea man. That's like the easiest shit in the world to do.
Yeah.
Getting out there and actually doing it and taking action and putting the ideas into making something out of that's hard. Especially when you're putting yourself out there. How exposed do you feel when you're just on a stage and you're bombing?
Well, before I answer that, I want to say, we were praising the concept of the internet earlier, kind of like tongue in cheek, but also being real. The internet also is to blame for how many critics there are right now because we've given all these people have a voice, which on paper is like sweet. And it's like, that might be a good idea actually. But then you're like, wait a minute. Now everyone has a voice and everyone feels like they're whatever. So yeah, critics are everywhere. How does it feel to be bombing on stage? Is that what you asked?
Yeah, like how I mean, does it feel like you're up there with no clothes on sometimes?
I mean, for me personally, right now, it doesn't really feel like anything. I mean, it can be embarrassing if there's someone in the crowd who you were like, oh, this person told me they were coming to see me because they haven't ever seen me before. It could be like, oh shit, this is the wrong show for you to come and see. But I think if you have the right mindset, you never live and die by one show. It's the thing like in sports. It's like you have to have a short-term memory span. And you can't not shoot the ball again because you missed the last two shots. So in comedy, it's like you have to have the mentality of like they can't all be winners. Gonna be all right. I'm not doing this for me to have a good show right now. I'm doing this because this fuels my soul and my world in a way that is everlasting. So I could have the worst show humanly imaginable right now, and it won't keep me from doing this again next week, right? You get to have that kind of mentality, but of course, it also sucks. It doesn't feel good. I mean, for people who aren't as strong-minded, it can shred your ego in a really devastating way if you're not careful.
Yeah, I think that's one of the cool things about Stoicism is the setting aside of the ego, because when you really realize that that our minds are actually trying to kill us pretty often, and our ego is trying to kill us pretty often, that you realize, how important it is to separate yourself from that. And that can be a daily battle for many of us. You said that comedy brings you what'd you say, everlasting fulfillment, something like that. What is it about it that does that for you? I'm telling you, man, there's something about you. You have this energy that not a lot of people have, where it doesn't seem like you wake up very many mornings and go, God damn it, here we go again. It seems like you wake up and you're like, hey, you might have some problems to solve that day, but you're doing something that you really like. What is it that brings that joy, that effervescence to your soul?
Yeah, well, you're right, and that feels really cool to hear. So thank you for saying that. I don't remember the last time I woke up and was like, "Son of a bitch." I mean, maybe a few weeks ago during Ida, but it was, because it's hot and my cats are panting and have a rash growing on their tummy. But it's like, you know what? We're gonna figure out what to do today. We're gonna figure out what this is. So, to answer your question, I mean, I don't. It's really hard to put my finger on it exactly, but I just think it's wanting to live a certain type of life and wanting to control what I can control and wanting to completely let go of what I can't control as best as I possibly can, which that skill varies from day to day, obviously, because we're all humans. But something about comedy and connecting with people and bringing joy to others and just doing something that is fun and also interesting, I think, is what fuels me, because there are other things that I like that are fun, but I don't know if I get to go on a cool podcast and talk about it because I don't know how much you'd be interested in how fun that was. So I do like, this is a little bit of ego coming into it, but I do like that people are interested in in the world that I'm a part of. And I'm very grateful that I've had enough jobs in this industry to be able to have a conversation like this from multiple vantage points. And I think that's something that just makes me happy, and it fuels me, and it's exciting. It will always be exciting. So I guess it's just a combination of all those things.
Yeah, that's very cool, man. When you hit a roadblock or like a creativity log jam, how do you get around? Well, maybe you never do, but are you microdosing here or there? Are you having a ayahuasca ceremony? Are you hitting the green? Are you drinking 10 hurricanes? What are you doing to get over the hump and get back to where the creative juices are flowing again?
Well, I want to say first and foremost, I did all of those things right before this call today. So
yes!
I'm surprised I've maintained like I have.
I took a bunch of meth on my way here, so that explains my energy levels.
Of course, we all have creative roadblocks, and it means different things for different people. I like to plan ahead for those, and I give myself like the most boring task that I'm putting off. Because if I'm on fire, I'm like, I'm not about to watch all these tapes that these comics submitted to me because they want to come and be on one of my festivals, or I'm not going to like cold email these businesses to see if I can go teach them. Like, if I'm on fire creatively, I don't need to do those things. But so whatever, I don't need to. I don't want to spend that energy on those what can be mindless tasks. So I put those aside, and if I'm feeling like I want to get some stuff done, but I don't have it, I don't have the creative juice that day for whatever reason. Maybe it's out of my control. Maybe it's I did something wrong. Whatever. Then that's what I'm like. Okay, what are the boring things? What's on my boring list? And I just do that, and I feel productive, and I almost always get my creativity back as a result of that because it feels good that I got that thing done, and I feel smart about it too. To be honest, I feel like, man, I escaped a big like pitfall for a lot of people like me. Like I work smarter, not harder in that situation.
Yeah, that's very cool.
That amps me up too.
Yeah, I'm sure. So those like almost like monastic tasks, like when I have a lot of anxiety, best thing I can do that gets me out of that, or stress, because there's a lot of stress in business, is just to do things they're just tasks. Just start knocking down tasks, or drive to a job site, or whatever it is. That gets me over the hump. It sounds kind of like taking action is your antidote to losing maybe a little bit of a creative spark, and that sounds like great advice for young comics. You said you put together these festivals. Are you always looking for talent? Like, if you're out and about and you're at a show and you've never seen this person before, will you go recruit them and be like, "Yo, I need your contact info. We got to connect."
Oh, big time. That's another thing that I think I'm really good at, and that I really enjoy in a really big way. I love being the like I love producing events, and I love being able to give opportunities out to other people. So yeah, whether if I'm just watching a show, I'm out of town and I'm watching a show, I'm not involved in the show, I'm 100% in approaching that person, whether it's on Twitter, Instagram, or in person is always best, but sometimes it's not possible. And it's like, look, I had this thing coming up, or I think you'd be good for this, or whatever. And enough people did that for me as I was coming up, and it always felt really good. And so it's like, let's be that way. Let's be that way forever. And I'm in a unique position right now because this new comedy club just opened in New Orleans, and I'm the booker. I'm not the only person booking shows in New Orleans by any means, but I'm in a unique position because I've been booking shows in this town for 12, 15 years. I've booked thousands of shows, brought in people, done a bunch of small local stuff. And I'm good at it, and I can do it efficiently. And so I'm booking this comedy club for Tammy and Jackie, the two owners. And so now I'm in a position where not only can I put you on like one of my weird festivals or include you in a touring event maybe, but now I can actually get you booked at a club, which you could make a lot of money doing. And a lot of people are looking for their in. Like, a lot of people are like, how do I get booked at a club? I've got my 30 minutes. What do I do next? I don't have an agent. And it's like, and I love being able to help people in that position.
That's awesome. Again, part of your this entrepreneurial DIY thing that you have, did you know Tammy and Jackie, or was it just something that just sort of happened? Is that moonshine, by the way, that you're drinking out of that mason jar right there?
I've known Tammy and Jackie for a long time. I've worked with them in many different ways. So yeah, it's a ton of fun. I mean, it's something it's a skill that I have, that I enjoy doing it. I like to think that I will always want to be performing in some aspects, but I'm also smart. I know that at a certain point, like maybe like the festival gigs will dry up, or I won't have the energy, or maybe desire. I probably will have the energy, but maybe I won't want to go on tour. I don't know. I'm so open-minded and in the moment and flexible that I want to be prepared for anything. So I enjoy booking. I enjoy booking other people's shows. I enjoy putting together run orders and curating comedy events for other people and for myself and for different festivals. So it's a cool skill to have, and so I'm into it.
A lot of athletes, when they describe a game where they're just on their game, they're in the zone, and they'll get to the end and they don't remember any part of that. Have you had a show where you have just fucking killed it, and I mean, it's like adrenaline straight into your veins, but you get to the end, and that night you're like, man, that was incredible, but I don't remember. What's your experience like when you just crush it?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why you keep going back. You keep chasing that. You want more of that. It's getting into that flow state where it just feels like you can do no wrong, and you're just cashing in on all the hard work that you put into this craft, and you're just absolutely crushing it. And yeah, it's unbeatable. And it's happened in different contexts too. Like it can happen in stand-up. It can happen even like teaching an improv class. Like, I mean, I know what I'm saying because, I'm a good teacher, but it's like I could do like a 3-hour class, and by the end of it, just be like, I can't believe that was 3 hours. It feels like we just got here because we were so in the flow. It especially happens when you're doing improv, which is one of the reasons why people are drawn to improv as a hobby, even if you don't want to perform. Because you can really get into that flow zone pretty quickly, and it's addictive. It's like there's nothing better than being out of your own head and doing something playful. So yeah, it's big time badass.
When you're about to go on stage, is your heart just pounding out of your chest when you're about to go on stage in front of a full house?
If it's something I've never done before and somewhere I've never been, and for someone I want to impress, it could be. Yeah. It could be. I'm telling you though, right now at this point, if I'm doing, an improv show, pretty much in front of anyone, I'm solid. Like I've done it enough, and I'm so in. Like I feel really, really strong about that. If I'm getting booked for like a specific stand-up show, if it's like, come do stand-up at my fundraising gala in this town that you're unfamiliar. Like that might be a little bit like, oh man, what am I getting myself into? But like the nervousness isn't. I hope I do good. The nervousness is like, I don't know what to expect from these people because they don't know me. They have no context for who I am. This might be tough.
Yeah.
But of course, like if I'm at like a big conference, I taught at this last month. I taught at this military like communications productivity conference in San Antonio, and it was like this big auditorium, and I was teaching them improv, and I had a little moment of like, oh, this is a lot of people, and this is like a big thing, and I want to do this right. I want this to be good. But it almost always is coming from a place of you just want it to be good, not like, can I do this? Am I doing the right thing? It's more like, man, I just want this to hit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I don't remember when I came up with this, and it's nothing special. I think I was probably 16 or 17, hanging out with buddies, in the locker rooms or whatever. I grew up loving sports, and I was always the one making the jokes that were like really inappropriate, like really inappropriate, and people would laugh, but then they'd be like, oh my God, and I'd just be like, hey, there's 2 criteria: funny, not funny. That's it. It's not right, wrong, appropriate, inappropriate. There's comedians who have different styles. For instance, Jerry Seinfeld, he never works blue. He never cusses. He's extremely polished and very observational. And then you got guys who are dropping F-bombs left, right, and center. You got Jeselnik, as we mentioned before, is talking about, everything from abortion to plane crashes. Where are you there in figuring out content that's funny? Is there stuff that you won't touch? Is there or if you think it's funny, will you explore it? Is that part of the pushing the envelope stuff we talked about earlier?
Yeah, I'm pretty open-minded as far as content, but I will say I don't lean towards like current events and like political stuff. That's just not interesting enough to me. I don't think that I have anything compelling to say about that. I would rather talk about something weird my cat did than about like a tax break, whatever. It's just not in my wheelhouse, you know? So it's not that it's too controversial for me. It's just not as interesting. So I like the space that I've carved out for myself is kind of like, is more like absurd. Like, I'm not telling these long stories, you know. I might have like an actual story to tell that's funny, but I'd much rather do like a small, like misdirection, weird, silly thing than like, oh, wait till you hear what Chris has to say about what Trump just did. It's like, I honestly don't give a shit, you know.
Yeah.
There's plenty enough people who are good at that and enjoy it that y'all can have that. You know, I'd rather tell a joke about a T-shirt cannon going wrong at a basketball game than like gun control. You know?
Yeah.
That's actually funny.
Hey, why don't you compare the two? Yeah, that would actually make for some funny content right there. You could probably do an entire stand-up routine comparing a shirt cannon to, I don't know, an AR-15 or something.
Yeah, T-shirt gun control.
Yeah, maybe in Texas it's easier to get an AR-15 than a T-shirt cannon. Is there something wrong with this picture?
T-shirt.
Yeah, and then have one on stage and just be firing off your branded T-shirts into the crowd. Have you ever come across somebody who you were like, oh my God, you're hilarious, and they were like, yeah, but I'm not passionate about it?
Oh, for sure, especially in improv classes. You know,
Really?
There's people who are into it, who are having fun, but they're like, yeah, I'm probably not going to pursue this. And I'm like, they have no idea how automatic this is for them, how organic and effortless it is. Like, because they haven't done it, they haven't struggled with it enough to know that they have something special. And, you know, there's weekend warriors in all fields. There's people who are like, I don't know, who are like really great blackjack players. And it's like, dude, you should be hustling tables and casinos across. And they're like, nah, I just go down to the pizza shop every weekend. I'm good. There's people who, I don't know, who write Facebook posts that should actually be writing books. You know, so that's just part of the way the world works. But yeah, you can be watching some of those people and be like, man, you have no idea. You have no idea how truly funny and like interesting you are.
Yeah. Do you ever come across people too where they just want it too much and the talent's just not there? And have you ever had to say, you know, I think we need to get you that manager job at Home Depot, man?
Well, kind of, but like, you know, it's never my job to tell someone to like stop doing it and do something else entirely. But like, I don't know, someone's in one of my improv classes, you know, let's say they're in like a year-long program with me, and their end game is to like be on Saturday Night Live. I would tell that person is like, we got to figure out like what's your second favorite thing about Saturday Night Live? Because you're not going to be on it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, can you swing a hammer? You want to work with the crew? I mean, that's on the table, sure. But I think most of the time it's like, you know, you just figure out what your role is in this world. Like, and then how do you go and attack it? Like, for a lot of people in comedy, they love comedy so much, and it's meant so much to them, and they feel like it's very personal and intimate, and so they want to study it and practice it. But it turns out they're just a huge comedy fan, and
Sure.
They shouldn't be doing it. And oftentimes those people it takes them moving to Chicago or New York to find that out. They go there and they're like, oh my God, I can't hang and I don't love the process. It's like, cool. Well, at least you live in New York now and you get to go watch all these amazing shows. And it's like, so you made it okay. You know, so that happens a lot too.
I've always thought it was weird that you would see okay, so this is very off my tough macho rugby brand, but there's a movie with Piper Perabo. I don't remember where it's set. It's called Coyote Ugly. So she's a songwriter, but she can also sing. but she writes a song, and then Leanne Ryan. The movie's ridiculous. They named a bunch of bars after that. I think there was one here in Dallas for a while.
I walked by the one in the French Quarter almost.
Really? Okay, so it's still there. I think the one here is out of business, and probably rightly so. I went once, and I don't know if $20 for Miller Lite's really my speed, but it is what it is. What's up with these comedy writers who they've carved out a niche and they're just a writer, and then you never really see them? You will sometimes see them perform, but is it that they just prefer that medium of just writing, and they've just or maybe it makes them more money, or maybe they're happier, maybe they don't have to deal with the anxiety of having to get on stage? What's the deal there?
Yeah, I think it's, for a lot of us, especially if you move to a big city, it's like you are trying to find a job in this world, and you take the job, and then if you're really passionate about doing stand-up, but like your stand-up got you the job as an actor on this sitcom. You wouldn't have gotten this job if you weren't a stand-up. But suddenly cut to 5 years later, and you don't do stand-up anymore because you're a full-time actor. And it's like, that's just the way it goes. And sometimes instead of acting, it's writing, or it's doing production work, or it's becoming a manager for other comics, or running a venue. Really, I think people who are comedy lifers have such a passion for working in the industry that you take what you get. And for a lot of people, it's like, okay, I thought it was going to be a comic. I wanted to be a comic so bad because I love Carlin or whatever. But you know what? I just got offered a job at a talent agency. Fuck it.
Yeah.
I'm still going to do stand-up on the weekends. And then, of course, 2 years later, you're not doing it anymore. And you used to do stand-up back in the day. That's just the way it happens sometimes. I think the most common one that people are also not in crisis about is writing. There's a lot of comics. I have a lot of friends who I know from doing stand-up. None of them do stand-up anymore, but they're all writing for, like, The Tonight Show. They're writing for Bob's Burgers or whatever, or one of them's like a voiceover actor. And it's like, yeah, they used to love doing, they probably still do love stand-up, but now they have a job, and they succeeded. Like, their goal was to work in Hollywood using their comedic skills, and they succeeded. It just so happens that they're not specifically doing stand-up comedy.
Sure.
But at a certain point, you can call your shot too, Jess. Like, you can be so prolific, so good, you do whatever the fuck you want, and then you could, like, that's why you see some people taking some, like Jim Carrey painting now, for example. Like, you can call your own shots at a certain point.
Well, $20 million a picture. Yeah, you could you do whatever the fuck you want, man. You could get your dick bronzed if you wanted, and probably sell it if that floated your boat.
Yeah, dude, fuck it. Get your dick covered in Bitcoin.
Dude, there you go. Yeah,
like a precious metal. Come on.
God damn. The one thing that's always fascinated me about stand-up comics, or about many of them, is their physical appearance. So that physical comedy, like Chris Farley comes to mind. Van Down by the River. Nobody doesn't know that skit. It's hilarious. He's cinching up his belt. You obviously have that awesome that beard, that Father Abraham beard. It's very it's extreme. Yeah, we got to get you on a beard commercial, or I think we need to get you a beard oil sponsorship. But what is the look? Your look, or a comedian's look? How can that enhance or detract from the way that people receive your material?
Yeah, well, I think an audience is very naturally looking to decide how they feel about you as soon as possible, right? And so your physical appearance can play a role in that, just like any job, like the way you look going into a job interview, right? Actually, I'm just stumbling upon this idea right now that it's almost like doing stand-up is like you're interviewing for the job of, like, the funny one in their group of friends. Like, you walk up on stage and everyone's like, okay, who's this guy or girl? What does he or she look like? How do they stand? What are their quirks? When they're talking, and all of it's part of the puzzle. I think for some people, they're very conscious of it, and they're intentionally crafting an image. And you can make the argument that that's not organic, and and you can tell. but I think some of it just all comes with it comes with the territory, right? It's like I don't know, like I know that me having glasses and this beard, I know that people are maybe seeing like is this like jolly silly guy, you know? And it's like I'm not like big, but I'm not like really thin either. So then they were like, oh, he's also like. Is he like someone actually asked me one time? I can't fucking believe someone actually asked me, am I like kind of a little bit fat on purpose? And I'm like, actually, no. I'm like, I actually,
no, it's the red beans and rice. Fuck you.
Yeah. It's like, actually, I'm really heartbroken that you said that.
Yeah, God almighty.
But it's you never really know. I mean, it's it is part of it, and I think that you can craft a persona through the way you look and the way you talk and what your perspective is. But let's
get you in the gym and get you jacked like Carrot Top, bro.
Let's do it.
And get you all Botoxed up and just like boom, ta-dow, bam, just ready to roll.
I can box Carrot Top.
Oh my fucking God, Triller. We gotta at Triller after this shit, dude. Let's do that. Hey, I'll be in your corner. I'll work security. I'll walk you out. Yes, absolutely, man. I'll bring like 30 rugby guys. We'll be your security detail, and we will make it happen, man.
Hell yeah, and I'll wear stripes in your honor, too.
Oh, my God, that's so legit. Like 20 months ago, when COVID hit, obviously, performing live, all that kind of stuff probably went out the window for a while down there like it did everywhere else. We've talked about adversity. We've talked about the obstacles, the way. When that all started to come into our consciousness and life started changing, how did you approach that?
I took all of my comedy classes that I offered and I put them all online. I started doing Zoom classes. I made an online sketch comedy writing program that it emails you a lesson every day. I just took all of my stuff that I did in a classroom because I wasn't into performing on Zoom. I wasn't into that. It just wasn't my thing. Shout out to all the people who did it and survived and figured out a way to like it. It wasn't for me. So I went all education. Started doing Zoom classes. I was relieved when I did my first Zoom improv class. And I was like, oh, it's still good. Arguably better for some people. Some people will never stand up and drive to a comedy theater and stand up and they will take some creative risks. So I started realizing that, oh, now I can reach an entire world, not just people who live in my city, and we can do it virtually. So that was my big pivot, and it was really successful. And I'm still doing it to this day. I still teach virtual improv classes.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you've also started a podcast here, at least in the reasonably recent past. What's that experience been like for you?
I think we lost internet for a second.
Yes, it was called Hell Yes with it is I haven't gotten into with it yet. I did one preliminary season because I want to make sure I liked it before I committed to doing it full time. But it's basically a comedy show about creativity. So I want to learn about people's creative process, not just in comedy. I can handle the comedy part. I'll make whatever we're talking about funny. I just want to learn about your creative process. And so I did 5 episodes for my first season about a few months ago, and I'm eager to bring it back. But yeah, it's on Spotify. I put the videos up on YouTube. It's called Hell Yes with Trew.
That's awesome, man. And if entrepreneurs or business owners want to reach out to you and schedule one of your team building improv classes, how can they reach you via email?
So my email address is go at hellyescreative.com. And what I would do is get on a call with you, learn more about what you are hoping to get out of it, learn more about your company, or maybe it's for you as an individual. And, not necessarily a sales call, just learning more about what you do and seeing if I can help you. And if I can't, directing you to someone who can or giving you some other advice. But if I can help you, then we would get another call and get more specific. But these classes are for companies that are small, that are big, that are virtual, that are in person. I also do one-on-one creative coaching. So a lot of people come to me to help them untangle like the mess in their own heads about whatever their creative journey is. Like one of my clients has like an essential oils company, and she just wants to be more humorous and creative in the marketing for it. Someone else is works in soccer in New Zealand, and just like wants to have more like teamwork type of exercises. And so I do improv with him every week. It's like my clients do it for a bunch of different reasons. But so yeah, you just email. Sorry, I went off on a tangent again.
That's awesome.
Email me, go@hellyescreative.com. It's such a portable, flexible art form, whether it's one-on-one, me and your company, me in a group, me at your place, us on Zoom, whatever.
There you go. And your what is your Instagram handle?
It is my name, so Chris Trew, ChrisTrew.
All right, awesome. And then your YouTube channel, you've got a bunch of subscribers on there. Where can people find you on YouTube?
Yeah, so you search for Chris Trew again, ChrisTrew, and it's I'm getting back. The YouTube channel was dormant for a while, but about a year ago, I started like popping stuff back in there. So whenever I'm traveling, I'm trying to do like improv in the wild type videos, like book reviews, just stuff like that.
Nice.
And it's all about it's funny, but it's all about it's educational, us using our creativity for good, and just trying to keep things interesting.
There you go, man. And back to what brought us together in the first place last week, we discussed if viewers or listeners want to contribute to Ida relief. There's a specific charity that you recommend. Can you walk us through their contact info? We'll obviously put this on the video and on any of the other social media blasts we do to promote this podcast.
Yes, for sure. And thank you for giving me the space to talk about all this stuff, especially this. BayouFund.org. BayouFund.org is going to redirect to a GoFundMe that's probably getting the most publicity down here because it's connected to the parishes at the bottom of the state, which is the places that need it the most. So if I could pick one place to send money to, I would say BayouFund.org. It's going directly to Terrebonne, Lafourche Parish, the places that were hit the absolute hardest. We're doing okay here in New Orleans. So still come to New Orleans, come spend your money here, come to Bourbon Street, come see a comedy show, take an improv class with me, whatever. Come here and hang out, but send your money down south to BayouFund.org.
Yeah, that's very cool. If our listeners or viewers want some recommendations for the off the beaten path best place to get gumbo or a po' boy or some of those what are those things that they the
sweet?
Yeah. Can they hit you on Instagram and you'll be their little tour guide there, but only if they come take a class.
Oh, hell yeah. I got all y'all's back. Send me a DM, tell me what you're into, and I'll throw a recommendation straight down your throat.
That's badass. Last couple questions. Did you see the show on HBO called Trew?
I sure did.
What did you think of it?
I like Trew. I mean, it lost a little bit of its pizzazz, towards the middle-ish, but as a New Orleanian, seeing your city in such a well-made show like that, I think is really special, especially the time it came out. It was appointment viewing. A lot of us got HBO because of Trew. They did the right thing. The people that were involved with that show. So yeah, I'm really happy it happened. I'm pro Trew.
Right on. And then, what do you think the best movie featuring New Orleans that shows the New Orleans? Like, I'm thinking Double Jeopardy That was a really good one with Ashley Judd and Tommy Lee Jones. Deja Vu with Denzel Washington, Jim Caviezel, and Paula Patton was very interesting because it was all over the place. It was deep in the bayou, in the city. There's a couple others. There was a really bad one Sly Stallone did with Jason Momoa, I believe, where they fought with axes. What's your favorite New Orleans-based movie? Can you think of one off the top of your head?
Man, I wish I had a go-to answer here, but honestly, I don't watch enough movies to have like a Rolodex type of knowledge of all of them. And also, I might be the wrong person to ask this to because I love New Orleans so much that I kind of pop for like any flashy montage of New Orleans. I'm like, there it is. That's
cool.
us.
Yeah.
I just get so hype about it. If you have a couple of hours there when you want to watch something about New Orleans, man, go get the Saints 2010 and a Super Bowl DVD, man, and just watch that game over and over again. That's probably the best day of my life.
Yeah, that was amazing. And y'all are going to be good this year. Put it on the Packers on Sunday, big time.
Oh my God,
I mean,
yes.
that was pretty fucking crazy. Are you bullish on Jameis Winston?
I'm in. Let me tell you something. A little birdie in that organization told me that the reason why Winston didn't replace Breeze when he was hurt last year was because he would have been so good that people would have been saying we should bench Breeze, which of course you can't bench someone like Drew Brees at the twilight of his career like that. You just can't do that. And so that's why Jameis didn't play. And so when I heard that, I was like, let's fucking go.
That's awesome.
Saints plus 3.5. I'm in. Let's go.
I'm going to be watching Saints games with an even more critical eye moving forward after this podcast. Are all the home games going to be based out of Jacksonville, or is that going to move around until things open back up?
That was the only one. The week four, we're playing the Giants, and that's the next home game. And all signs point to it being fine. And I'll be there. I'll be in that dome. I'm ready for it.
That's awesome, man. Hey, Chris, man, I appreciate your time. You're badass. This was awesome. I can't wait to do the next one in person, I hope, and I can't wait to come down, eat some food, take an improv class from you, and actually try to get funny for a change. Thank you, man. I appreciate your time.
Dude, thank you so much. I love the way this all came together. I am always grateful to talk about New Orleans and comedy, and I hope you get a million stars for this episode. Rate and review the podcast for my boy, and I can't wait to be in touch too.
Thanks, brother, and we'll get all that Ida relief stuff blasted out, and hopefully we can do some good, man.
Awesome.
Thank you, buddy. Told you that'd be great. Chris is awesome. If you can give, please give. BayouFund.org will flash all the info here on the screen for you. Reach out to Chris as well, especially if you're an entrepreneur or you build teams, you're an executive, and you want your team to get better at public speaking and sales and relatability, or you just want to break down barriers and do some team building. Chris is really good at that. Check out his YouTube channel as well. I appreciate you watching these podcasts. I enjoy them. They're a lot of fun for me. I'd love to know what you think. Drop a comment below or hit me on my Instagram at Jess from the Northwest. And if you want to do some work together, you can email me anytime live at autographconstruction.com. We'll see you all next time.